tend to try to start with people's conversion story. And so I was wondering if you could talk about how you became Orthodox and why you became Orthodox.
Sure. I don't know how long of a version you want.
The longer the better, often.
Well, I don't know about that. But anyway, I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and I was brought up Southern Baptist, but I never liked it. It's always intrigued me how it could be that I couldn't articulate it, but I never was exposed to liturgical worship, and yet I always felt that the Baptist Church was not really, it wasn't really worship. And I'm talking about 7 or 8. I just didn't like it. And anyway, when I got old enough, I would be very difficult about going. My dad was a deacon in the Baptist church. It wasn't a fundamentalist kind of church at all. This is where like leaders at the time would be going to. It was kind of like an intellectual Baptist church, you might say. My dad was very much a brilliant intellectual. Anyhow, I just told my parents, I will have church at home. I'll do hymns, prayer, and read scripture. So that's what I did. And then I had a lot of illness as a child, which I think tends to make you serious and think about the meaning of life. And so anyway, it had that impact on me. And I was a spiritual searcher, I would say. But the Christianity that I came across just, let's say, didn't impress me as anything particularly deep. Someone I knew in college who wanted to be an Episcopal priest said, you should be Episcopalian. You can believe whatever you want. And I thought, I have zero interest in that. I don't need to join a church to believe whatever I want. So anyway, that led me to get kind of interested in other religions. This was the mid-1970s. All this was happening. And I also was a huge Anglophile mostly from my love of British children's literature, Lewis and people like that. So, as well as other British literature. So anyway, I went to the University of St. Andrews in Scotland to do an MA comparing Sufi teaching stories and New Testament parables. That was my 1-year program. However, the people who accepted me at St. Andrews didn't bother to ask, apparently, the people in the Arabic department if there'd be anybody who could supervise me. And they didn't realize, and I didn't realize, that Sufism is like a terrible heresy if you're a mainstream Muslim. So they didn't want to have anything to do with it. And they didn't even find someone to supervise that part till January or February of the 1-year program. And that was actually a lovely man in Durham. And he was part of this group called the Traditionalists, or the Perennialists, sometimes they're called. People like René Guénon and Fritjof Schuon. Somebody might have heard of them. Anyway, I was impressed with him. My supervisor at St. Andrews, I don't think he even believed in God. was like a social gospel kind of person. It was a complete misfit. I was interested in mystical experience and things like that. So anyway, I wanted to find somebody else to work with and just transfer to a PhD program, because this man I met who was a convert to Sufism also told me that all my information about Sufism was wrong, basically. And he had very compelling evidence proving that. So it was obvious I could not do this in a year, in 4 months. So anyway, this group had a magazine, and there I found an article on parables. My broad interest was using stories to communicate theology. So, and just as a way to narrow it, I chose New Testament parables. So anyway, I found an article that I really liked on parables by a man in there named Patrick Moore. So I thought, well, we'll just look up in Who's Who of Authors. Maybe he's teaching somewhere, and I can transfer. So I found P. Moore at the University of Kent, and I wrote him a very detailed letter that I was, very interested in the small group, the traditionalists, small obscure group, really. And what I also didn't realize at that time, they weren't doing interdisciplinary studies in Britain. But he was very, so I told him my very interdisciplinary topic that I wanted to do. And I got a very enthusiastic reply back from a completely different person. I had actually written to Peter Moore, but not only was he interested in my unusual topic, very unusual topic. Now, all these Orthodox people are really interested in stories and all that, but that nobody was doing that very much in the 1970s. That was kind of an unusual thing. So anyway, but he was already interested in that. And he actually had been very involved in this little obscure group, amazingly. And he was very interested in my topic. And he was also teaching Introduction to the Study of World Religions. So one of the things the traditionalists said that I was trying to take seriously was that, they said it doesn't matter what tradition you're in. Of course, I don't agree with that now, but you have to actually pick one and really be in it. You can't just take a little from here and a little from there. So I was looking for a tradition, you could say. And so anyway, but Peter Moore was in the theology department, and I was really trying to be in the literature department. So I had 2 really weird interviews on the way down to Canterbury in literature departments, one of which wasn't even supposed to be an interview. The other one, the man forgot that he had said he was interested in my topic. And then 2 weeks later, wrote me saying, "Oh, please come back. I don't know what came over me." Anyway, that was a very Kafkaesque experience, complete with elevators with no doors that just move continually, and lots of weird elements. So anyway, I get down to Canterbury, and I meet Peter Moore and his lovely new Greek wife, and we just hit it off right away with our personalities, our interests. And he even told me that he was reading George MacDonald to his wife at night. And I always loved George MacDonald. So that certainly endeared him to me. So anyway, I ended up going there to do a doctorate in that topic, and talked to Peter more about my spiritual search. And he was teaching world religions, as I think I mentioned. So here's someone who's, in a way, an expert about all the world religions, and he tells me, you should just go to the Orthodox Church. He says, it's really different. And all he told me was, they don't have pews, it'll all be in Slavonic, and it won't matter if you're late, because it took about 3 hours to get there. Because he sent me to the Russian cathedral in London, where Metropolitan Anthony of Suraj was celebrating the liturgy. So I went there, probably in October, I guess. That's all I knew about the Orthodox Church. That's it. And I go in, and my first thought was, I can't believe this is a Christian church. It was so beautiful. And I always liked, I was enough of a Southern Baptist to never even for a second consider being Roman Catholic. But I liked high Anglican worship. But this was just like a whole nother level, because you had the beauty of the liturgical worship, but you also had this sense of freedom, which I loved. Some people standing, some people sitting, some people lighting the candle. And Metropolitan Anthony he very much emphasized to his people the importance of everyone praying the liturgy. It's not a spectator event. And he really taught his people how to pray. And so when I went in there, the power of the prayer and the presence of God was very, not quite overwhelming, but very, very evident. And so my next thought was, well, I don't know what these people believe, but it's obvious that they know God and they know how to worship him, and that's what I've been looking for. So, and I should add that at that time they had like a teeny room where they had coffee hour, so they never announced it. And Metropolitan Anthony was also, one of the things he was very strict about was absolutely no talking in church. So, if you bought a candle or you bought a Prospero, you never said a word. Nobody said a word. And I absolutely loved that no one said anything to me, because I always hated it in the Baptist church when people would have this kind of phony greeting, being, acting like they're so glad you're there. I never felt like they really were. Maybe I was too hard on them. But anyway, it was just custom designed for me. And I did find, as I read and kept going, that even though I had not liked the Baptist church since I was 7 years old, I never was baptized. I was taken to church school, but I still had some Protestant prejudices. I just absorbed them through the air or something. So I was very grateful that actually I couldn't understand anything that was said, and I could just experience the prayer. For me, that was the perfect thing. So my supervisor gave me books to read. and this is starting in 76, you could read everything really in a few months then that was in English. You could not read everything in English, I don't think, no matter how much time you had these days. But anyway, starting with Lasky's Mystical Theology, I was amazed by that book. I said, wow, if either I already believe all these things, or if I had thought of them, I would have believed them.
Yeah.
So, and the next book I read, I remember, was Father Schmeimann's For the Life of the World. I felt the same about that. So anyway, I kept going and reading. And meanwhile, I was a teaching assistant teaching about all the other world religions. So it was like such a perfect setup. It's unbelievable. And nothing else could even come close to the Orthodox Church that I had discovered as really the fullness of the truth. So during Lent, I was reading Father Schmeimann's book of Water and the Spirit, and I began to feel that if I'm going to be baptized in the Orthodox Church, I need to do it on Holy Saturday. But I wanted to at least visit one other parish to make sure that the cathedral in London wasn't the only Orthodox church like that. So my supervisor was friends with the priest in Oxford, and he arranged for me to go and stay there a few days the week before Holy Week. So this was actually the second half of the 70s was an amazing time to be Orthodox in England, because not only did you have Metropolitan Antony and Saint Sophrony, you have Father Lev Gile, Metropolitan Kallistos, Nicholas Zernov, and all these amazing Russian emigres who were like 90 and or close to it. So people. I met a woman who remembers riding in a horse-drawn troika in the snow in Russia, before the revolution, who took the required New Testament course from Nicholas Berdyaev. These were people who had really been through the fire, and they were on fire for Christ, and amazing people. So, and of course, I just thought this was all ordinary, which is just as well at the time. So anyway, Nicholas Zernov came up to me in the service. It was a small parish then with about 8 full professors at Oxford, which is incredible. Anyway, he was one of them. He showed me how to make the sign of the cross, different things. He was legally blind, but he could tell if someone was new. And he also had really tremendous, genuine love for every person that he encountered. And so I welcomed that kind of welcome. Anyway, then I went back to Canterbury, conferred with my supervisor a little bit, but he and his wife were going to Greece for Holy Week. And so he said, well, if you decide you do want to join the Orthodox Church, if you have any more questions, you can call up Philip Sherrard at the University of London. He'll be there. And they were friends. And but don't ask Father Michael at the cathedral in London. to receive you because he makes people wait a long time. So I went to London on Friday. I met with Philip Sherrard, and he was very impressive personally as well. And he answered all my questions very well. He was a very deeply spiritual person, an impressive person to meet, and
Yeah,
with,
I'm sure.
I'm sure. Person full of love and joy. And so I met with him. First of all, it's a little impressive to me that he even was willing to meet with me, some random person wanting to ask him questions. I just found him a person obviously prayerful and full of love and peace, kindness, just seeing how he interacted with other people as we passed them by, going to talk to him. So that's my main impression of him. I don't even really remember what we talked about, to be honest. But I was satisfied with his answers and impressed with him. And so I was going back to Canterbury, going to the train station, and it was just drizzling a little bit. And so I had my umbrella, and I felt like I just needed to sit down somewhere and pray about this. So there was a little garden outside of a church, and I went in there and sat down with the umbrella, covering my head. And I closed my eyes, and I said, God, I know I shouldn't ask for a sign. At least that was what I thought. But I really need a sign. Should I do this or not? I really took it very seriously as a life commitment. And just at that moment, I could see, I heard a dog viciously barking at me, which is really weird. First of all, animals usually like me. Second of all, dogs don't bark at people in cities. There's people everywhere. So I open my eyes and I just see the bottom half of a man all in black with his black dog. And he's got him on a chain leash. And I watch them walk past. I close my eyes. I say the same thing, and the same thing happens. The man is coming back with the dog. So I'm not going to close my eyes again. This is getting kind of creepy. And I say the prayer again, and the same thing happens. And the man is there hitting this metal chain against his leg. It was so creepy. So I said to myself, it isn't safe for me to be out here. I have to go into the church. So I walked into that church building, but then I realized I am a great lover of allegories. This was like an allegory of my spiritual life in a way. I always told my parents, I find God in nature. I don't really need to go to church. That's what I would say, one of those people. But it wasn't safe anymore for me to do that. I needed to really go into the church. So went home and I called the priest in Oxford, and I said, this is the eve of Lazarus Saturday. Will you baptize me on Holy Saturday? And he said, well, that's really an unusual request. I can't decide that by myself. So call me back on Sunday. But who would be your sponsor, your godfather? Well, the only people I knew were in Greece. So I said, well, Nicholas Zernov showed me how to make the sign of the cross. Maybe he would be willing. He said, okay, I'll ask him. Later, I found out he probably had 500 godchildren. Anyway, he had a huge number. So anyway, I call him on Sunday, and he said, all right, if you come for Holy Week, I'll baptize you on Holy Saturday. And Nicholas Cerno will be your sponsor. And Nicholas said, because I wasn't baptized anything before and I wasn't part of any other Christian group before, he said, well, it's kind of like a baby, to just, but they did know, my supervisor had been basically catechizing me for all those months as well. So anyway, I went for Holy Week. I got baptized on Holy Saturday.